Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are jumping into a scenario that, while completely fictional, feels chillingly plausible. We're talking about a potential full-blown conflict between the US, Israel, and Iran set in 2026. We're going to break down how it all could start, how it might escalate, and what it would mean for the rest of the world, all based on our source material. All right, so what's the game plan? Here's our roadmap. We'll walk through the conflict's timeline, from the very first strikes all the way to the global consequences, to really understand how a regional crisis could spiral into something much, much bigger. So let's set the scene. The date is February 28th, 2026. This is when everything kicks off. A massive, coordinated military operation is launched against Iran, and just like that, the region is plunged into a devastating new conflict. Yeah, so the conflict just ignites with this incredibly coordinated multi-day offensive. And what's really interesting here are the two separate operational names, right? The US calls it Epic Fury, while Israel calls it Roaring Lion. It kind of hints that even though they're working together, they still have their own distinct command structures. So what were they aiming for with these thousands of strikes? Well, the goal was pretty straightforward and absolutely brutal: to surgically remove Iran's most important military capabilities. And, perhaps even more importantly, to decapitate its leadership right from the get-go. And that brings us to the most decisive, and I mean devastating, blow of the entire opening campaign: this focus on dismantling Iran's leadership from the very top. And then, bam, the news breaks, and it is a bombshell. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has been killed. I mean, you really can't overstate how huge this is. This one event sends a seismic shockwave through the entire nation, leaving this gaping power vacuum right at the top. And you see, taking out the supreme leader wasn't a single event. It was like pulling the main pillar out of a building. Suddenly you have this massive power vacuum. Other top officials are getting hit at the same time, key government buildings are destroyed, the entire state is just thrown into absolute chaos. Okay, but Iran was not just going to sit there and take it. Not at all. The retaliation that our source material describes, wow, it was fast, it was fierce, and it basically dragged the entire region headfirst into this rapidly widening conflict. And you can see right here how the whole game changed. The initial strikes were more surgical, right? Aimed at military and leadership targets inside Iran. But the retaliation? That was a whole different story. Iran started hitting cities in Israel and American military bases all over the Gulf. That is a huge escalation. And this wasn't just a simple tit for tat. Iran went all in on a multi-front assault. We're talking hundreds of ballistic missiles and drones flying toward Israel. US bases in Kuwait, Bahrain, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, all of them are getting hit. And then they activate their allies, like Hezbollah, who immediately ramp up attacks from Lebanon. Suddenly, Israel is fighting a war on another front. And as you'd probably expect, the fallout from all this wasn't just military. It almost immediately sent these massive shockwaves ripping through the global economy. First, let's just talk about the human cost, because it's just staggering. In just the first few days, we're looking at reports of over 1,200 people killed across Iran, Israel, and Lebanon. It's a devastating number in such a short amount of time. And the money, my gosh, the financial cost was just as astronomical. We're talking an estimated $3.7 billion in the first 100 hours alone. Just think about that burn rate. It really shows you the insane scale of this military engagement. So why did the global economy freak out so fast? Well, it all comes down to this one spot on the map: the Strait of Hormuz. You have to understand, this little waterway is basically the planet's oil pipeline. And according to the reports, Iran started to choke it off immediately. And the second that happened, all hell broke loose on the markets. Traffic through the strait gets snarled. Global oil prices just go through the roof. And all the major shipping companies? They hit the brakes, suspending their routes through the area. Absolute chaos for global trade. So you fast forward about a week. The situation is now, well, it's on a knife's edge. What started out as a regional fight is now looking like it could become a full-blown global crisis. And honestly, no one can see a clear way out. And there are zero signs of this thing slowing down. In fact, it's getting worse. The bombardment of Iran continues, but now the targets are changing. They're hitting major fuel depots, oil facilities right in Tehran. We're even seeing reports of naval battles breaking out in the Indian Ocean. The battlefield is literally expanding. So what about diplomacy? Is anyone talking? Well, not really. This quote reported from the U.S. administration, "We demand an unconditional surrender." That pretty much slams the door shut on any kind of negotiation. It's a hardline stance that just pushes everyone that much closer to the edge. And that leaves us with the one question that's probably on your mind, the terrifying question at the very heart of this whole scenario. With the world economy in a nosedive, with battles spreading, and with no one talking peace, are we watching the start of World War III? That is the chilling, unanswered question our source material leaves us all hanging on.